Good morning, friends. This is Duncan at Free as an Eagle, just checking back in with you. Been working steadily over the last few weeks, so I'm trying to put up at least one video a week just to keep you posted on where we're at with this little project. So we're looking at winter, dealing out one more potentially good storm over the next couple of days. Looks like a coastal storm, and it may kind of drift east and out. I don't expect a ton, but they're talking 8 to 14. I think Boston might get hammered and point south. So anyway, I think this is the 22nd maybe of February. So we are moving towards spring. And I think last video we were talking about sheetrock and insulation and furring strips and a bunch of things. Today, I want to focus on, actually, some areas of this place are getting close to being finished, and we're doing a lot of, this is encouraging to me to get the sheetrock going. We actually did install the lower 10-foot pieces we were discussing last week. So I'm standing on the little balcony of the second floor, but we actually installed the 10-foot sheets and furred partway up, and we have staging in a sheetrock lift, which if you look down here, you can see part of. My brother Jerry rigged a sheetrock lift so we can install vertical sheets. They will sit on the sheetrock lift, and then they have staging kind of hiding under the deck now that will come out, and we'll be able to work off of that and hopefully run the next level of sheetrock, and then we'll have to get on staging and get the final level. This is probably the last hairy part of this project that I can think of now. Of course, I'm sure there's more doing the outside, and the high stuff's been a little nervy, but thank God it's gone quite well. And now we're looking at finishing up this cathedral area. So once we're staged up in there, I'm going to try to get that sheetrock up, taped, painted, and get a ceiling piece up. We have a piece of wire down here that's going to eventually be run up to the top for a ceiling fan light fixture. So that's the last wiring project. And the other light, I'm going to use one of my brother's tricks, and we're going to do some indirect lighting. I have wire that I ran up through. You can see it on either side of the window out here. I ran some wire up. You can't really see the one behind the stovepipe, but anyway, we're going to have some indirect lighting where it's thrown up at the ceiling, and I'm probably going to go with a fairly warm kind of linen white, a warm off white, in order to make this place feel warm. It'll be up in the winter where it's cold a lot of the time, so I like to have a warm feeling in the place. So today's project, well, actually, I go back a couple of days. So this little upper loft that I like is done essentially, and I put a little railing system in up there just to create something to grab onto and create a feeling of security. It isn't code hider. It would look like a little jail cell up there, but it's enough so that it's a little safer, and it creates something to grab onto. So that little loft is pretty much done. It makes a nice little spot to look out through that window up high. I get this little raven light that's kind of cute up there. It's not turned on right now, but anyway, that's there. So we sheetrock this big dormer, and the big chandelier will hang up in there, so the painted area will sort of set that off. And what I'm doing today, yesterday, my son Carter was helping Steen and poly some wood, and I was up in here insulating. I ran some more wiring and a switch leg up to that ceiling. We're going to hang an old lamp in there, something my great-grandfather made way back in the day, and I still have it, so that's where that's going to go. And then this dormer itself is going to be all wood. I decided we're sheetrocking the big areas because paint and tape are quicker and easier, but I have a lot of this wood that I was able to get at a good price, and my son's been staining and polying. I just did a little bit of poly myself to make that usable. He had a sudden recollection that he'd committed to doing a gig today, and for a friend of his at a nursing home, and obviously that was going to take precedence. They're musicians, and they like to play out. They've been doing quite well the last few years, so that's an exciting thing. So anyway, I don't have him helping me today, so I'm like, well, I'm up here. I'm just going to do what I can. I'm battling a little bit of a flu, so my head's a little stuffy, hoping this doesn't overtake me, but right now I don't feel too bad. So whilst I feel reasonably good, I'm going to try to get a little work done. So what I've done in here, just by way of explanation, so this little dormer is insulated now, and to make sure the insulation is really tight, I went ahead with plastic. There's some areas of this where the triangles and things are that didn't have paper facing on them, and you don't want to have vapor getting behind things. And then, like I did learn this a few weeks ago, if moisture finds its way behind the insulation, especially if it's not covered with anything, it will freeze on the plywood on the outside. Then you'll get water, you'll get ice in there. When it melts, it's potentially going to create mold and other undesirables. So I carefully insulated this nice and tight and pretty completely as best as I could, and then we took plastic and we stapled that on over it. So now, because it's wood, it's not a continuous sheet like sheetrock. My thought is, and I hope I'm right about this in general, is that if you put up sheetrock and then put bin primer over it, which has shellac in it and seals quite well, then you end up with a barrier. Not only do you have a barrier on the insulation, the paper facing, but you also have that by way of the paint. So if you have a bin primer and then you have a couple of coats of latex paint over that, I don't see a lot of moisture getting through all of that and reaching through the insulation and through to the plywood. So main thing here is to avoid any moisture penetration that would end up producing ice. And this is very well insulated, so I don't foresee a huge problem with that. But I did find ice under areas where I had insulated that didn't have facing or plastic over it, and that was kind of a scary discovery, to find 1/8 of an inch or more of ice on the plywood under the insulation. That's not good. So we're going to do our best to eliminate that possibility. But anyway, so today's project is I'm going to take this wood and ultimately hope it'll come out like this little upper loft, and I'm going to start on the upper part where there's almost like a little shelf there. We'll start there and run up, and then we'll do the lower part. And at this point, we bought another big stack of wood, so I have plenty to work with, and I will play with that. That's today's project. And just for fun, I'll show you a couple of cute little lights. I'm starting to order lighting, and when I can, I'm putting it in so that it'll look pretty and be usable. Anything that I can finish here, I'm trying to get done. And of course, it's still a little cool out, so I got a little stove going, and that's throwing some good heat, especially upstairs. That's where that goes. Okay, so you can see these are 8-foot sheets here of 5/8 fire code sheetrock. They're quite heavy, and the driver showed up the other day, and I felt like I was just coming down with the flu, and I was like feeling like crap. He calls me at my house and is waiting here in the driveway with 26 sheets of this stuff. I'm like, oh, please. And I had just gone out and pushed the snowblower around to get rid of about 7 inches of snow he'd had. And then I ran up here and helped him unload all that sheetrock. So by the time I got home, I was like, oh my God. Kind of snapped me out of the bad feeling I had, but only briefly. So I'm battling this cold. It's been going around, but hopefully it takes off. That's the pile of wood we just got, and that's the nice wide stuff. So that's actually going to become a lot of the extension jamb and trim for the interior windows, with the exception of the big triangles, which require longer than 6 feet. But, oh yeah, and then we did score some really nice cabinets for about half price from a lumber yard. And you can pick up some really good deals if you find places that will just mark down and unload misorders or damaged things that are still essentially good. But my wife and I had been talking about some kind of a pantry set up in the basement, and because this kitchen is limited in size, and she's a good cook and loves cooking, and we like to entertain a little bit, so this kitchen dining situation is not going to be huge. So in order to create more space, we decided we could set up a little pantry area in the basement. And because this is a rustic structure, I almost rejected these, and I'm like, wait a second, the basement is a different animal. You got to go down the stairs, and when we're down there, it's, I can live with some things that don't match the rustic decor. Up here in the top is going to be very rustic, but down there not so much. I don't really care. These will be very handy. In fact, this thing, let's see if I can open it. I'll show you what it is. So this is a nice craft-made cabinet, and it has a whole series of these drawer type things. And then up here I've got a nice little shelf, and then so that will go down there on a little raised platform. And then these other two are base. Well, one's a wall cabinet, one's a base. So I'm going to sit the base next to this big cabinet, put the wall cabinet on top of a piece of counter above and to the back side of that, so that creates a little space to, say, set down bags of groceries, and then you can unload them and put them away. So that was a nice little grab, and will be a handy thing to have. And I'll show you a couple other little things that are kind of cute. I like these. So we're into a rustic theme here. If I turn this switch on, then I have a nice little rustic light up there with some critters. And that kind of finishes out this little porch, which is cool. And then if I go to the outside here, I wired for an outside light, and I found this beautiful little lantern. If I think the middle switch is that guy, I'll turn that on. And yeah, so this little thing hangs on the front. I step down so you can see it from the entry point. So yeah, so when you walk up to the house, this is the entry porch. It's kind of a crazy looking thing with a big overhang, but it's kind of cool. And then you got this nice little lantern up here. And of course I got a not so antique looking motion sensor, but it's handy to have. And then we got the little porch light. So those are some fun little features. I will say, one thing I love about carpentry, even though a lot of it is just dog work and is necessary before you get to the fun stuff, the satisfaction for me is really in the finish work. And one thing I like to get a little philosophical is, I was thinking this morning of the satisfaction of doing this kind of work. A lot of it is frustrating. It's dog work. It takes a long time. You get angry with gravity because things fall. You beat up your body sometimes, and a lot of it's heavy and repetitive, and things like insulating. Framing is kind of satisfying because you're creating structures and they happen fast relative to the other parts of the job. But when you get into insulating, you're breathing nasty dust and wearing masks and things like that aren't as much fun. And roofing and plywood, these things are satisfying and they're necessary to get done. But the real fun is doing finished things where you actually get to the end of the project and see the way it's supposed to look. It's all a dream and a vision at first, and then little by little it becomes a reality. And you have to pay the price. If you want something. I've learned a few things on this journey. I'll call it a journey because it's been going on. This is about the third year of doing things to get this project to happen. And, the journey, it's in the journey that a lot of what you learn happens, and even seeing your own weaknesses. Like, I realize I can get easily frustrated and angry and, upset with things that don't go according to plan, and then you got to just ride that all out. If you want to get to the end of the journey, you got to just keep on going, whether it's uphill or downhill or on a level, whether the weather's nice or whether it's terrible. You got to keep on going, as best you can. But in the end, what I love most about it, I think, is just simply bringing the beauty out of things that already exist. Like, to me, wood is sort of a medium. Like, I'm not an artist in the sense of a painter or anything of that. I'm not a musician like my kids are. And I was kind of groping for what actually would satisfy my desire to be creative. And I'm like, yeah, I've been doing carpentry for 30 years. And there's a reason, I think the deep reason is I love working with wood and bringing out the beauty of it. So to be able to bring out the beauty of things and, create a finished product, you have to go through all the basic stages of digging holes and building foundations and clearing trees and eventually framing up a structure. And then you have to insulate and wire and sheetrock and tape and trim and all this stuff. So all these steps are required. But by the time you're done, you get to a finished product that's beautiful, and that's ultimately the goal. But along the way, it's sort of an experience of overcoming yourself. Like, I tend to like to be philosophical, and I'll listen to interesting podcasts while I'm working, if I'm working alone. And, just finding out, you are forced to come up, the battle is both for yourself and against yourself. It's against your weaknesses and things that you need to work on and get past. And it's for yourself because you're growing and learning whilst you're doing all this stuff. So the journey is a big part of it. When you're done, what are you going to do? Well, the good thing is I get to live in this little house. That's going to be very cool, and I can't wait. And the other part of the journey is after that, I've got to, set some other goals. So whether I build another structure, or one of the goals that I've set for this summer. Last summer, some friends and I went up, and between my brother and them, we hiked Mount Washington, Mount Adams, Mount Jefferson, which are some of the northern presidentials. And they were rugged hikes, and I was horribly exhausted. But there was something deeply satisfying about doing them. And now, I got a poster of the rest of the whole presidential range. I'm like, you know what? This summer, my goal is to knock off at least 3 more of them, maybe all of them, because there's hikes that you can go on, stay in a little cabin, and then the next day get up and do more of them. And they're all kind of, you can run a line of them, and they're all in not a circle or in a line kind of, but it's possible to go up there and do them all in a few days. I'm getting older, so I'm not one of these young whippersnappers that I ran into last year that were knocking them all out in a day. These young, wiry guys that have a ton of energy. I'm like, damn, I'd be glad to do them in 3 days. That would be plenty for me. I was tiring enough to do 3 of them in 2 days. So, but anyway, it's great to have goals, things to look forward to. And while I'm not too old to do it, there's things that have to be knocked off the old bucket list. This little cabin being one of them. I had to knock out one more actual build for my own use and satisfaction after 30 years of doing work for other people, which I'm glad I did. It gave me the ability to do this now. So fun part is just chipping away at this and seeing it take shape. Anyway, enough of my rambling. I'll let you go, and we'll see whether we get a storm overnight or not. Meanwhile, I'm going to start putting boards up, and on the next video, I'll show you where we've gone with this. Have a good day.